Hello all, this is Ash Nyangani, ADTA, Data Visualization Summer Course, and I'll be presenting my final project today on all four parts, and I will be jumping right in, starting with part one, Data Visualization Graphs, and this has to do with relationships that the student has with 15 individuals. you know um, and to start off, I have the data in a table, with the names in the first column there, with the names, not actual names used. So we have bear, chopsticks, noodles, go-go, yo-yo, those kind of names. And then in the second column you have relationship, and how are these people related to that particular student or individual. So you have relationships that span some generations, as well as kith and kin. So you have wife, daughter, son, mother, father, brother, sister, cousin, and sister-in-law, and friends in there. And then also to add more context as to the relationships, I included a column of years known. How many years have those two people, as in the particular person in the table as well as the student, knowing each other. For some people it's the whole life, and that whole life could be 12 years. Or for some people, like say the daughter here, is for 1 year. And for the mother here, they've known each other for 35 years, and so forth. And then as this the next column is the most important metric, because it's actually the one that measures the strength of relationship to the student. This is the number of contacts per month. The reason I chose this is, if you have a strong relationship with somebody, you're gonna be in contact with them often. And so what I did was, if with an individual, if they talk at least once a day, that's gonna be one. And then over a 30-day month, then you're gonna have all these other numbers. So you have numbers that are ranging from 30 times a month to 0.1, here with the sister-in-law. And that method of contact could be in person. So for example, with the wife and the daughter here, and this, and the son, the contact is in person. Whereas with most people, it's going to be text. And that's because that's how most people communicate these days. It's either with text, and then if something that's more serious, or escalating, then you have a call, then you have an in-person kind of thing. But if you're living together, then it's gonna be more or less in contact, in-person contact. And another metric that I added here for context is distance apart. How far do they live apart? For example, if it's 0 here, it means that they live in the same household. And this is for, you see here, the wife and the daughters live in the same household, whereas the son here lives 35 miles away. And this is because he lives with his mom, which is not the student's wife. And here the mother of the student, the sister and the brother, live 648 miles away, which is actually in Birmingham, Alabama. Whereas most people live in the Dallas Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. You have Irving, Plano, Savannah, in North Dallas, and so forth. But you also have people who live in Washington, D.C., which is the cousin here, TJ, and in Austin, and so forth. So that's how I compile the data, and then now we can jump in and see how the metrics look. Now, starting with this tab here, you can see I used this map here, this tree map, because it presents a better representation of of the strength. Depending on how strong a bond is between two people, it is symbolized by how big the square or rectangle is in this metric. So the size signals the strength, whereas the color signals, the city. What is the city that person is living in? For example, this dark blue shade is living in Dallas, which is also, you can say, color is also representing how far apart they live. So the dark blue color means that they more or less live in the same household, so it's dark blue. Whereas the very lightest color here would be this here, where you have the father of the student living in Atlanta, which is 792 miles away, with the lightest blue, so you're living the furthest out, you know. So the proximity, closest to proximity, is the dark shade, and then going on to the light shade over here, and then, you have listing of the information here. Okay, the name of the person, the relationship here, which is wife here, and then the city and they live in and how far it is. So it lives in Dallas, and how far they live from the student is 0 miles. So they live in the same household, and how many years they've known each other. So in this case, it's 12 years that they've known each other. And this is a better metric, because if we start off looking at number of contacts per month, they are in contact 30 times in a month, so every day and in person. So you have that. Whereas we can let's pick somebody random somewhere in the middle. Somewhere here we have Miss Shisha, who is a sister and lives in Irving, which is 17 miles away, and they have known each other for 26 years, and they're in contact per month maybe 7.5 times. So maybe roughly 2 times a week, So it's somewhere in the middle there. You have in contact 30 times for the wife. Then you can go to the cousin here. You have in contact about 13 times, a month. Whereas the sister here, they're in contact 7.5 times in a month. And here when you go to this one here, which is a sister-in-law, Allison, who lives in Houston, they're in contact more or less close to 0 times in a month. So 0.1 times in a month. And they've known each other for 7 years. So I feel as if the tree map really provides that strong metric of how close a bond or relationship is with these individuals. Whereas if we had used this next metric here, distance apart, if we had used distance apart, we would have seen, okay, with TJ here, TJ has the greatest distance apart, and that's 1,348 miles away, but it only measures distance apart, and that doesn't quite capture what we're looking for. Let's see here if we shift to this. Another way we could have measured these relationships is we could have measured as in, years known. Years known would have been a great measure, but just because you've known somebody for a long time doesn't mean that your relationship is strong. Relationships ebb and flow. Some relationships get stronger and stronger as age progresses, and some relationships get weaker and weaker as time goes on. And as they get weaker, maybe they, at some point they then begin to get stronger. So it's not quite a good measure, I felt. So that's why I used number of contacts per month. So this wraps up this part 1 of the question. Now we can proceed to part 2. Part 2, it has a listing of FBI crime data, and that crime data is split into codes. Each crime corresponds to a particular code in the FBI database, and all those codes, 26 of them, as you can see from the summary here, are listed on this very first tab here. And the codes range from, they're numerical, but they have some subcategories. For codes that have subcategories, they also have an alpha character. So you can have for 01, it has 01A, and then it also has 01B, but there are 26 of those. And then moving on to number of criminal cases per FBI code. So you can see that for this code, which is code 06, it has the highest number of criminal cases at 1.2 million cases. And the way I've structured this graphic is such that the code with the highest number of criminal cases, is ranked up highest, is listed up high, and then the one with the lowest number of cases is listed low, which is 01B has the lowest cases at 22. So you have the dark blue here, and then progressing all the way to light blue down here. And of these, there were 5.9 million cases in the database, and that's pretty much a lot. With the minimum cases is 22, like I've just stated, and the maximum number of cases is 1.2 million. And the average the average number of criminal cases per FBI code is about 225,000, criminal cases. Then we'll move on to primary types of crime. Now, in the data, you also had a listing of the crimes, listed according to primary types of crime. And the bigger, I use the bubble form because it quickly shows us, where the biggest number of crimes were listed in under what primary type. And here, this was theft. Theft had the highest number of cases at 1.2 million. Then from there, we dropped down to 1.07 million cases, and this was battery. And then from there, I believe we went to narcotics. Is that correct? No, we actually went to criminal damage at 675,000, cases, and then narcotics. Those were the top four of cases. So this bubble form allowed us to really see, the differences there. And I thought it was a powerful infographic here. And just to make sure that it's, the number of cases stays consistent, it's the same, we're using this as a cross check. This number of sum of cases still 5.9 million, which is the same thing that we saw when we were looking at the data here from the FBI codes. Okay. Now we'll move on to number of criminal cases per primary type. Same thing that we saw when we're using the FBI codes. It is here you have theft at the highest number with 1.2 million, cases, with battery 1.69, criminal damage, narcotics, and other offenses, and then when you scroll all the way down, you have domestic violence, which had only one case there, and you'll see that for the primary cases, these are, segmented into 35 primary types, with an average, primary type having 167 cases, where the minimum number was 1, the maximum was 1.2, which was theft here, so this was, this was a different way of presenting the same info, as we're using the bubbles here. Now, number of criminal cases per FBI code and primary type. You see that FBI codes are listed here in the first column, then primary type is in the second column, and so forth. So you see that FBI code 6 corresponds to theft, and this is where we had the 1.2 million cases. And then the FBI code 0.8b is split into 3 primary types, where you have battery, domestic violence, and ritualism, and you see, breakdown even more. And the reason now we have a count of 56, remember when we were looking at, FBI codes, they had 26, and primary types of code had 35. But here we now have 56, count. And that's because of this segmentation here, where primary type, you might have 3 primary types going to 1 FBI code, and so also the way I did this was the number of criminal cases with the highest number is this up top here, and it goes all the way down, until you have the least number, which is 22. So that FBI code of 0.01b corresponded to homicide. Now, period. What time span was this data recorded from? It was recorded from 2001 to 2015, where you see that, using this, this infographic here, you can see that 2001 actually had the second most crime, with 2002 having the most, 487,000. But then though you saw that the data, gradually, decreased. Crime gradually decreased all the way to 2015, where there was actually a big plunge, because you can see here from 2013 to 14 there was a drop of less than about 25, or less than 30,000, whereas from 14 to 15, it was a big jump. It was about a 33% jump there. So in order to exhibit the same data, you can see it here now in the line graph, where you have here data in 2001 all the way down to 2015, and you can see that big jump I was talking about. This was a 45% 5% jump from the previous year.